නව ටොමෙක්ස් පැල්ලම් සහ විසබීජ අවම කර දින 3ක් දක්වා ටොයිලට් එක ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ව තමයි. ටොමෙක්ස්.
Tonight, around the bush, the president announces his willingness to appoint an interim government and prime minister only if all parties agree to the independent proposals. The clock is ticking. The central bank says that the Hawala system is living on borrowed time. One size fits all. The Gulf-based protests continue for day 22, while Northern Province MP calls out double police standards. Not a bad idea. Sri Lankan Airlines unions say the 21 aircraft lease must go ahead. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Friday the 29th of April 2022.
Clear Ice Cool Menthol is horrible තොර ලස්සන කෙස් කලබක් ලබා දෙයි. Clear සමගින් දැන් zero dandruff.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Bringing you the latest from across the island, this is First at 9 and I'm David Ebert. Now, the President's media division confirmed today that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has agreed to an interim government comprising of representatives of all parties. The head of state has also stated that he will support the program only if all other political parties agree on the proposals of the independent groups. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party also confirmed that the President agreed for an appointment of a Prime Minister National Executive Council consisting of party leaders.
It took weeks after the resignation of the last cabinet ministers for a new cabinet to be named by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa that was widely expected to have a more youthful makeup. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, however, stayed on in his position. There was no room in the new one for prominent members of the previous cabinet such as former ministers Namal Rajapaksa, Rohita Begunawardana, Johnston Fernando and Gamini Lokuge. The move attracted some displeasure within the Sri Lanka Pudujana Peramuna government, leading to 41 members crossing the aisle to sit as independents. The group labelled the new cabinet as unnecessary, adding that a mere cabinet shuffle was not going to appease the public's gripe with the government. Early this month, the independent group submitted a list of proposals to the president, outlining what they felt was the need of the hour. It included calls for an interim government, the formation of a National Executive Council, reenactment of the 19th Amendment, and most significantly, the appointment of a new Prime Minister to head the interim government. According to them, the President had agreed to all the proposals except for the appointment of a new Prime Minister. Word of this outcome, however, led to the chief prelates of the main Buddhist sects writing to the President demanding the immediate resignation of the government and for an interim government to be appointed. Due to the mounting pressure, the President then agreed to convene a separate meeting with the leaders of the independent political parties to discuss the subject. The meeting was worked off at 10:30 this morning at the President's house in Colombo. With all eyes on the outcome today, SLFP chairman former President Maithripala Sirisena revealed some promising news that an agreement had been reached with the President on forming an interim all-party government headed by a new Prime Minister.
නව අගමැතිවරයෙක් සමග අන්තර්වාර ඇමති මණ්ඩලය පිහිටවීම සඳහා ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ කැමැත්ත ප්‍රකාශ කළා. කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලය සුළු කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයක් වෙන්න ඕන ඇමතිවරු 15ක් 20ක් වගේ අතරේ ඒ අනුව ඒත් එක්කම ජාතික සභාවක් පත් කරන්න එකඟ වුණා ජනාධිපතිතුමා අගමැතිවරයා පත් කිරීම ගැන. ඇමතිවරු පත් කිරීම පිළිබඳව අමාත්‍යාංශ ලේකම්වරු වෙන්න පුළුවන්, පොලිස්පති වෙන්න පුළුවන්, නීතිපති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ සියලු දේවල් ජාතික සභාව තමයි තීන්දුව කරන්නේ මේ තනතුරු වලට මේ අය හොඳයි කියන එක. ඒ වගේම විධායක සභාව ජනාධිපතිතුමාට උපදෙස් දෙනවා මේ විදිහෙයි කටයුතු කළ යුත්තේ කියලා. එතකොට ජනාධිපතිතුමාත් ඇමති මණ්ඩලයත් ජාතික සභාව කියන ආකාරයට තමයි කටයුතු කළ යුතු වෙන්නේ.
නම ග්‍රාමාන්තිවරයෙක් සහ මාධ්‍ය මණ්ඩලයක් පිළිගුවට පස්සේ පළවෙනි කාර්ය විදියට 21 වෙනි සංශෝධනය ගේනවා 20 අවලංගු කරලා. ජනාධිපතිවරයාගේ බලතල පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට එනවා.
This evening, the President's media division released an official communique on the outcome of the talks held between the President and the leaders of the independent parties. It confirms that President has agreed to the formation of an interim government and that he will support this program if all political parties agree on the proposals presented by the independent group. The decision was also taken at the meeting to appoint 5 representatives to hold discussions on the appointments of the new interim government.
Now, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka said today that through a gazette which will be issued soon, the Finance Ministry will clamp down on payments made for imported goods via the Hawala and Undial payment systems. This, the central bank believes, would help solve the forex crisis in the country to some extent, as importers would not be able to clear goods through customs unless payments have been made through banks. Meanwhile, Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinha, reassured that while measures are being taken to ensure that essential goods won't be in short supply, talks with Indian officials on procuring fuel via a credit line has made progress as they agreed to provide another $500 million for the requirement.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka held a media briefing today to announce new measures taken to improve the domestic foreign exchange market. During the media briefing, the Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinha said that the CBSL and the Finance Ministry will take measures to prevent payments being made through the Hawala and the Undial methods and direct them through the banks. This, the Governor said, once brought into effect by Gazette tomorrow, no goods will be passed through the customs unless payments are made through a bank, which will then resolve the foreign currency deficit within the banking system.
දාන්තර මුල්ලරඹුලේ සාකච්ඡාවලට ගියාම විශේෂයෙන් අපිට විශාල සහයෝගයක් පෙන්නුම් කරා IMF එකේ External Fund Facility කියන ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් එක සඳහා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඊළඟ මාස දෙකක් වගේ ඇතුළත ඒක සාකච්ඡා කරලා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ එක යම්කිසි මට්ටමක එකඟතාවයට පැමිණෙන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒ කියන්නේ අර ස්ටාෆ් ලෙවල් ඇග්‍රීමන්ට් කියන එකකට ආවට පස්සේ තාර්භාග කරන මේ වැඩසටහන ඉදිරියට යනවා කියලා ඊළඟ පිළිවෙල තමයි ඒක ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ විධායක මණ්ඩලයට ඉදිරිපත් කරලා අනුමැතිය අරගෙන එතෙන් ඉඳලා මුදල් පහසුකම ක්‍රමක්‍රමයෙන් ලබා ගැනීම. අනිත් පැත්තෙන් කරන එක තමයි අර අපි ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීම සඳහා ඒ වැඩ පිළිවෙලත් මුල්‍ය උපදේශකයන් සහ නීති උපදේශක සමාගම් දෙක පත් කිරීම අපි මම හිතන්නේ ඉතාම කෙටි කාලයක් තුළ අපිට පුළුවන් වෙයි කමෙන්ට් මණ්ඩලයේ අනුමැතියට ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න කවුද අපි තෝරගන්න කියලා මාස දෙක තුනක් ඇතුළත කාලයක අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ මේක ඉක්මන් කරලා ඒ වැඩ පිළිවෙල කරන්න. ඒ අමතරව ඊළඟ අභියෝගය තමයි තියෙන්නේ ඒ ආකාරයට ඒ කාලය තුළ මේ ඊළඟ මාස දෙක ඇතුළත මේ දැන් තියෙන රටේ පවතින භාණ්ඩවල හිගතාවය විදුලිය පෙට්‍රල් ඩීසල් ගෑස් සාත්‍යාව සමහර දේවල් තියෙන හිගිය මගහැරීම සඳහා හදාගන්න කියන එක. ඒතර ඒ සඳහා වැඩ පිළිවෙල තමයි අර ඉන්දියානු රජයෙන් විශේෂයෙන් මේ කෙටි කාලය තුළ ඒකල පුරුදු වුණා දැනටම ඉන්දියන් ලයින් ඔෆ් ක්‍රෙඩිට් කියලා $1 බිලියන් හම්බ වෙනවා. ඊට අමතරව පෙට්‍රල් ඩීසල් ආනයනිකුන් සඳහා තවත් $1 බිලියන් 500ක ආදායයක් තිබුණා. ඒක තව $1 බිලියන් 500 වැඩි කරන්න ඒක සාකච්ඡා කරා. ඒක සෑහෙන මට්ටමකට ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා. ඊට අපි බලනවා එක ආකාරයට තවත් විදේශ විනිමය ලබා ගැනීමට. දැන් ඔබතුමාලා හැමෝටම පේනවා මේ අපේ රටේ බැංකු ක්‍රමය තුළ විදේශ විනිමය හිගයක් තියෙනවා. අපි සොයලා බැලුවාම පේන දෙයක් තමයි බැංකු ක්‍රමයට පිටතෙන් විශාල වශයෙන් අර හවාල ක්‍රමය සහ ඉන්දියාල් කියන ක්‍රම වලින් විදේශ විනිමය ගලාගෙන යනවා. ඇවිල්ලා ඒව තුලින් සමහර වෙලාවට අපන ආනයන අපිට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය නොවන විශාල වශයෙන් ආනයන වලට මුදල් යන්නේ අර හවාල ඉන්දියාල් යන ක්‍රම වලින්. ඒ මුදල් නැවත බැංකු ක්‍රමයට ගෙන්වා ගැනීම සඳහා අපි සාකච්ඡා කළා මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශය සහ මහ බැංකුව පියවර කිහිපයක් ගන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. ඒකේ පළවෙනි පියවර තමයි ගැසට් නිවේදනයක් ගන්න අද හවස හෙට වෙනකොට නිකුත් කරයි මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන් යම්කිසි දෙයක් කෙනෙක් ආනයන කරනකොට ආනයන දේවල් එනවා අපේ කස්ටම් එක හරහා. ආවට ගණදෙනුව කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන අනිත් ක්‍රම දෙක තුනකින්. ඒතර ඒකෙන් තමයි අර හවාල උන්ඩියල් වගේ ක්‍රම වලින් කාට හරි කියනවා එහෙදී ඉම්පෝටර් එක දුන්නාම එයාට එහෙන් සල්ලි ටික දෙන්න මෙහෙන් රුපියල් දුන්නා කිව්වම ඒතර එහෙන් මුදල ගණදෙනුව පියවල ඉවරයි. ඒතර වෙන්නේ අර මුදල බැංකු ක්‍රමය හරහා නෙවෙන්නේ. එතෙන්දි තමයි අර ඕපන් එක මේ අලුතෙන් එන සර්කුලර් එකේ මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශයේ යටතේ පුළුවන් නිකුත් කරන්න චක්‍රලේඛනයක්. එතෙන්දී ඒ විදියට එන ආනයන යම්කිසි කාල සීමාවක් දීලා එතනින් පස්සට ඒව තහනම් කරනවා. ඒ සඳහා මුදල් ගෙවීම බැංකු ක්‍රමය තුලින්ම පමණයි කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ කියන ක්‍රමවේදය තමයි දැන් සකස් කරන්න යන්නේ.
Meanwhile, the anti-government protests at Golface Green marked this 22nd day today. Protests have continued with an increasingly high level of public participation, demanding for an immediate change in the country's political structure. Furthermore, public protests were held during the day at many locations across the country.
When public protests began last month against the government's handling of the economic crisis, no one imagined that they would have become sustained for such a long period. The best example of this is the protest at the Golface Green that has attracted thousands of people from all walks of life, both young and old, to voice a common call of Go Home Gota and the resignation of the government. Today marks the 22nd day, just a week or so short from its first month. The demonstrations have been strong and vibrant and have given everyone a platform to say in the strongest terms what they feel about the country's economic crisis and how it's being handled by its elected officials. Groups from all sectors have begun descending on the site, including a group of medical students who conducted their own protest march and joined the crowds at the Goldface Green today. Even advanced level students didn't forget to take some time off to make their presence felt at the Gota Gogama village. Acts of unity and fellowship have been the hallmark of the protests and were evident today as well, with newcomers such as some Sri Lankan expatriates who arrived at the Gota Gogama protest site to supply meals to the protesters. Meanwhile, the situation outside the temple trees seems to be no different, with the public continuing to occupy the location and call on the Premier to vacate his office. 3 of the protesters are currently engaged in a hunger strike to express their objections. However, more police action carried out today to make life difficult for protesters, such as the dismantling of the hunger strike's only source of shade, attracted the ire of the protesters, who took to the main road. The protests around the country, meanwhile, are showing no signs of slowing down, with calls for the president and the government to resign continuing across the country. One such was held in Polonnaruwa for the 4th consecutive day, calling on state member of Mahaweli, Siripala Gamla, to resign from his portfolio. Further, more demonstrations were held in several areas of the country today as well.
Now, Lanka Tamil Arasukachi parliamentarian Shanakian Rasamanikam and his associates were slapped with a restraining order yesterday, preventing him from engaging in any kind of protest for 2 weeks. However, after Tamil National Alliance MP M.A. Sumanthiran made a case to have the order removed, the Magistrates Court in Batiklo had merely made partial changes to the order. As such, MP Sumanthiran said that while they were dissatisfied with the Magistrates' decision today, they will seek a revision to the Magistrates' decision from a higher court.
A court order had been obtained by the Kalavanchikudi police preventing Ilankei Tamil Arasukachi MP Shanakian Rasamanikyam and his associates from protesting for a 2-week period within the Batiklo district. MP Rasamanikyam, who has been seen taking the lead in voicing many of the problems of the fisher community in the north and east, questioned the fairness of being slapped with such a court order while protests continue across the country. The police had obtained the restraining order against the parliamentarian based on information that a protest was supposed to take place yesterday, while in reality, a protest had been staged by a group of local government members.
කලවන්සුලි පොලිසිය මගින් තහනම් නියෝගයක් ලංකාවේ සියලු ප්‍රදේශවල සියලු පැතිවල උද්ඝෝෂණ කරගෙන යනවා. මඩකලපුව දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ කලවන්සුලි වල විතරක් මේ උද්ඝෝෂණ කිරීම පිළිබඳව නීති දාලා මම හෝ මම සම්බන්ධ කිසිම පුද්ගලයෙක් පාරේදී කරන උද්ඝෝෂණ වලින් පොදු දේපල ලැබෙන නම් ඒක මම තමයි ඒකට වග කියන්න වෙනවා. ඒත් ලංකාවේ ඉන්න සියලු දෙනාම අද මම සම්බන්ධ පුද්ගලයෙක් තමයි. එතකොට මම කොහොමද ලංකාවේ ඉන්න සියලු පුද්ගලයන් මම පාලනය කරන්නේ? කලවන්සුලි පොලිසියේ ඇවිල්ලා මෙහෙම කෝට් ඔර්ඩරයක් මට දීලා දෙනවා. ලංකාවේ කොච්චර උද්ඝෝෂණ වෙනවද? ලංකාවේ දිස්ත්‍රික්කවල හැම දිස්ත්‍රික්කෙම වෙනවා මේ උද්ඝෝෂණ.
Meanwhile, taking to Twitter yesterday, Tamil National Alliance MP M.A. Sumanthiran said that such a measure just goes to show that law enforcement works in a very different manner in the north and east compared to the rest of the country. Further, TNA MP Sumanthiran, who have appeared in court today to have the restraining order removed, expressed dissatisfaction with the magistrate's decision to amend the order instead of revoking it completely. As such, he said that they will file an application with a higher court in order to get the order revoked.
Kalawanchikudi police had obtained a restraining order against Batiklo district parliamentarian Honorable Shanakian Rasamanikam 2 days ago, saying that yesterday, the 28th, there was going to be an agitation that he had organized, and that during that agitation, the roads should not be blocked and private and public properties should not be damaged. He appeared in court today and made the application to court to have that order vacated on the basis that the original information filed by the police was false information. The Member of Parliament had not organized any such event. In fact, the police who replied confirmed that position and said that it was the Pradesha Sabha members who did such an event, and that was done very peacefully. There was a warrant to have such an order issued. Nevertheless, the Honourable Magistrate did not vacate the order fully. He merely changed the order slightly to say that in an event that is organised by the Honourable Member of Parliament, such things should not take place, and that will be valid for 14 days. We are dissatisfied with this order today, and therefore we will make an application for revision in the Higher Court. Everyone knows that such demonstrations are conducted right throughout the country as we speak. The main opposition party is walking from Kandy to Colombo, blocking the main road. Yesterday, over 1,000 trade unions did this in several cities of the country. Outside temple trees, people are agitating. The police's application to stop that was rejected by the Colombo Court Wednesday. Therefore, we think that this order is wrong and we will move higher court to have this order vacated.
While reiterating his intention to not join an interim government, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa says he is not afraid of threats or plans to remove him from his position as head of the opposition. He made these comments while addressing the protest march organized by his party, the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, that concluded at Tihariya today.
The Samagi Jana Balawegaya commenced a protest march from Kandy on the 26th of April, heading towards Colombo to express their objections to the government. The protest march, which is expected to arrive on the 1st of May for the party's May Day celebration in Colombo, concluded yesterday at Varakapola. This morning, the fourth day of the demonstration march began from Dannovita.
අන්තර්වාරාණ්ඩුවකට එන්නලු අපි නම් විරුද්ධයි යන්න අපිට පෙන්වන්නකො බලන්න අත්උස්සලා ඔබලත් විරුද්ධද කියලා කනක් ඇහිලා ඉන්න නෑ මට එනවා 24 පෑම කෝල් මට කියනවා අන්තර්වාර පාලනයේ දෙන්නේ කියලා තර්ජනයකුත් කරනවා අපි ළඟ සැලැස්ම තියනවලු විපක්ෂ නායකකම නැති කරන්න මං එකක් කියන්න කැමතියි මේ විපක්ෂ නායකකම් ගලවලා දාන්න මම ඕනම වෙලාවක සූදානම්.
The march concluded its fourth day from Tihariya in the Gampa district. The protest march is expected to commence its fifth day tomorrow at Yakala and conclude at Paliagoda.
The former senior superintendent of the Kegol division, KB Kitiratna, who gave the order to open fire on protesters in Rambukana, has been remanded until the 6th of next month. Meanwhile, 3 other police personnel who were also arrested were remanded as well, but until the 13th. Former Kegol SSP KB Kitiratna, who was arrested by the CID over the shooting incident at protesters in Rambukana, has been remanded until the 6th of May after he was produced before court today. The former Kegol SSP was taken into custody by the CID in Colombo yesterday, while 3 other police personnel were arrested at Kundasale in Kandy. An order issued by the Kegol Magistrates Court on the 27th of April in respect of the Rambukana incident was received by the Inspector General of Police yesterday. The IGP had then directed the CID to comply with the court order accordingly. Thereafter, a team headed by an Assistant Superintendent of Police of the CID carried out the arrest of the former SSP in charge of Kegol. When the case pertaining to the incident was taken up at the Kegol Magistrates Court, SSP Kitiratna had told court that he gave orders to open fire below the knees of protesters who attempted to set fire to a fuel bowser during the protest. According to him, he had first ordered police personnel to fire in the air when protesters tried to set fire to a filling station, and then later to shoot below the knees. Meanwhile, the 3 police constables who were also arrested in connection with the Rambukana shooting incident have been remanded until the 13th of May. They were produced before the Teleni Magistrates Court earlier today. And we'll be back with more local stories after this short break. Do stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Now, Litro Gas Lanka Limited has offered reassurances today that they will be able to stabilize the country's supply of gas cylinders within the next month, as the island will be receiving 2 shipments per week. They also stated that they have taken measures to distribute 100,000 domestic gas cylinders to the market every day.
The sight of frustrated people standing in long queues for cooking gas is not uncommon these days. However, Litro Gas Lanka Limited announced today that they will be able to stabilize the supply of gas in the country and restore normalcy within a month. This, they say, they will be able to do because the country has been receiving continuous shipments of gas. They also stated that the shortage of gas in the country will be arrested in the future, as 2 shipments of gas are due to arrive per week. Litro Gas adds that they have begun distributing 3,900 metric tons of gas across the island after unloading a shipment last night. It has also been reported that Litro Gas Lanka Limited has taken measures to distribute 100,000 domestic gas cylinders to the market daily from their Muthurajawala terminal.
Meanwhile, after causing some controversy over plans to lease out 21 new aircraft, The management of the national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines has received support from one of its trade unions, who insists that the lease goes ahead. Union representatives today urged the Committee on Public Enterprises, who earlier called on the airline to suspend the move for 3 months, to rethink the decision and instead keep a close eye on the transaction. Just about 2 weeks ago, a statement issued by the board of the national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines, expressing its intention to lease 21 new aircraft, raised a hornet's nest not only in political circles, but with every Sri Lankan hit by the current economic crisis. The company's timing could not have been any worse than it was. Just a bit more than a day later, the government dropped its default bombshell, suspending all debt repayments. This was, at the time, something that was a long time coming, as the country's foreign reserve position was almost at the bottom of the barrel. The release of the statement then caught the eye of the Parliamentary Committee on Public Enterprises, who summoned the Sri Lankan Airlines board to explain themselves and share their rationale behind the decision. Sri Lankan Airlines chairman Ashok Patirage's explanation at the time that the board was unaware that the government was planning to declare bankruptcy, however, didn't go down well with COPE chairman Professor Charitha Herath and committee member Dr. Harsha De Silva. Dr. De Silva's main point of contention, however, was that the statement released by Sri Lankan seemed like the choice had already been made by the airline to choose their suppliers, despite the country's crisis.
The immediate comprehension is that this is some sort of call to
bid.
Yeah, it says bids are invited. It doesn't say the expression of interest in order to consider to bid.
If you are saying that this was just for the exploration, then that is fine. The notification kind of, idea was something different.
What the board approved was an exploration of eligible bidders first, then moving to a RF. On the first question, you're absolutely right. I think timing is very, very bad. However, another aspect of timing we cannot change is the expiry of the leases. There will come a time when one by one these aircraft go out of the fleet. You're absolutely correct that the pricing environment, the risk beta that they add, etc., we don't know. It may not be ideal. However, like our chairman explained earlier today, there has been a fairly enthusiastic response thus far with respect to submission of credentials. And our view from just looking at 15 months down the road and the procurement time it takes to procure, our view is that having a situation with no aircraft is going to be detrimental to the airline.
But now the heads of the Sri Lankan Airlines branch of the Sri Lanka Nidahas Sevaka Samgamaya trade union says that the COPE committee is barking up the wrong tree and calls for the lease agreement to go ahead.
ශ්‍රී ලංකන් ගුවන් සමාගමේ ගුවන් යානා 24ක් භාවිතා කරනවා. ගුවන් යානා 8ක්. ඉතාමත් කෙටි කාලයක් ඇතුළත අපිට ධාවනයෙන් ඉවත් කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා ඒ ගුවන් යානයේ ආයු කාලය අවසන් වන නිසා. දැනට අපි භාවිතා කරන අපිට තියෙන නවීනතම ගුවන් යානයකට අපි ගෙවන්නේ මාසිකව අපේ ලීසින් වාරිකය $7ක් නම් අපිට ඊට වඩා අඩුවට ඊට වඩා අලුත් ගුවන් යානා මේ වෙනකොට වෙළඳ පොලේ ලබා ගන්න තියෙනවා. රටේ මිනිස්සු කලබල වෙන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. මේ මුදල් සනිකර භාණ්ඩාගාරයෙන්ම මුදල් ඉල්ලගෙන ගන්න ගුවන් යානා මිලදී ගැනීමක් නෙවෙයි මේක. එතකම පහුගිය කාලේ ගුවන් සමාගම අඛණ්ඩව මෙහෙයුම් ලාභ වාර්තා කරමින් ඉන්නවා.
දැන් මාස 8ක් තිස්සේ ශ්‍රී ලංකන් ගුවන් සමාගමට රජය විසින් කිසිම මුදලක් ලබා දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒතකොට අපි ආයතන විසින් හම්බ කරන මුදල් වලින් ආයතන විසින් ගෙවන ලීසින් ගෙවාගෙන පෙට්‍රෝලියම් කෝපරේෂන් එකට අද බිල් එක ගෙවලා තමයි අපි තෙල් ටික ලබා ගන්නෙ. සේවකයන්ගේ පඩ්ඩනාඩි ගෙවාගෙන තනියම ගුවන් සමාගම අද ඉස්සරහට ගමන් කරනවා. ඉතින් ඒකින්ද අපි කියන්නේ මේ ගුවන් යාන ටික අනිවාර්යෙන් ගන්න ඕනේ. දේශපාලන මැදිහත් වීම කරන්න ඕනේ හරි විදියට. එහෙමනම් විපක්ෂින දේශපාලකයෝ කරන්න ඕනේ මේ වෙලාවේ ඒක නෙමෙයි. සිද්ධ වෙන ගනුදෙනුව හරියට සිද්ධ වෙනවද නැද්ද කියන එක අධීක්ෂණය කරන්න ඕනේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුව. කෝප් කමිටුව. ඒකයි කරන්න ඕනේ.
Now, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe told the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce that although external debt restructuring remains a top priority for the Sri Lankan government, domestic debt in the form of government securities and Sri Lanka development bonds will not be restructured. While addressing a committee meeting of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce yesterday, he said that encouraging progress has been made towards establishing a macro-fiscal policy framework and initiating structural reforms. Dr. Veerasinghe also announced that additional measures will be implemented in order to address urgent economic concerns. The governor also highlighted the need to strengthen the social safety net with the rising cost of living. He also said multilateral agencies such as the World Bank will be looking to reallocate funds committed for projects towards assisting vulnerable segments of the population. While expediting IMF negotiations and implementing sustainable economic policy reforms being the main priority, he added that IMF action will continue irrespective of the political landscape and also stressed that all creditors will be treated equally in the debt restructuring process. Now, a survey carried out by the Centre for Policy Alternatives has revealed how far and wide the hit from the economic mismanagement has reached. A massive 88% of respondents reported of having been directly affected, as well as having to stand in queues to source essential items such as gas, fuel, milk powder and fertilizer during the past month. Further, 96% of the respondents are of the opinion that all politicians should be audited and any unaccounted wealth found must be confiscated by the state. The Centre for Policy Alternatives has released the results of a public survey carried out this month to capture a snapshot of public experiences under the current crisis situation. The survey was carried out using a semi-structured questionnaire with 1,200 sample respondents from the 4 main ethnic communities and with a sample distribution of men and women from both urban and rural localities in all districts. The report, however, paints a very dim picture of the current public sentiment and how widespread the fallout is right now from the crisis. According to the results, an overwhelming majority of Sri Lankans, 88% in fact, have been affected directly and have had to stand in queues to source essential items such as gas, fuel, milk powder and fertilizer during the past month. In addition, 9 out of 10 people have reported that their income or the income of an immediate family member has been affected as a result of the economic crisis. The survey findings also revealed an upsurge in public consciousness on democratic citizenship, with close to half of the respondents, both men and women, having taken part in at least one of the protests against those responsible for the country's plight. Further, the survey also paints a very clear image of who the people blame for the financial crisis, namely the government led by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. 62% of respondents say that it was the economic mismanagement of the Gotabaya Rajapaksa government, while 14.5% blamed it on economic mismanagement since independence and 14.4% on the country's corrupt political culture. Further, more than 96% of respondents believe that all politicians should be audited and all their unaccounted wealth should be confiscated by the state. In addition, 9 out of 10 Sri Lankans hold the opinion that Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa should resign and that the Rajapaksa family should leave Sri Lankan politics, while 87% support the demand that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa should resign. However, people seem to be cautious about the proposal that demands all 225 members of parliament resign, with only 56% supporting such a proposal. Now, in the market update for today, the Colombo Bourse ended the week strong with a gain of 12.83 points in the all-share price index to end at 7,624 points. The S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks ended at 2,509.24 points, following a loss of 5.51 points. Market turnover was 2.4 billion rupees with a share volume of 120 million. The sector that contributed most to turnover was the transportation sector. However, the sector index lost 0.88%. The second highest contributing sector was food, beverages and tobacco. Foreign purchases amounted to 82 million rupees, while foreign sales were 19 million rupees. And that's all the news we have for you tonight. We hope you join us tomorrow at the same time. Good night.